keynote speaker. Sheila Clefcorn is with KEO Marketing, and we're very honored to have her as this year's presenting sponsor. I don't think she could possibly be more involved in the Arizona Technology Council and the BMA and still run her company, so we appreciate all the work that she does.
Thank you, Steve. It's kind of fun wearing all these hats, being president of BMA and being really involved in the Tech Council. It's great fun, and we're a presenting sponsor of this event for one simple reason. This is where we spend all of our time. Many Tech Council companies are our clients. We spend time with the Business Marketing Association, and this is absolutely the best place to be when you're thinking about marketing in the Southwest. This is the largest B2B marketing event in the Southwest, and it continues to grow year after year. So for your companies, I'd encourage you to think about being a part of it for next year, because it's really been a great experience. Being involved with BMA and the Tech Council throughout the year is really important. So some people have asked me, so what does KEO Marketing do? We see you everywhere, which is a good thing. We are a digital marketing firm, a boutique agency here in Phoenix with clients around the country. So many of you in the audience, Avnet, Honeywell, OneNeck, IT, and many others are in the audience. And we just, more than anything, want to thank you for your business. So now I have the great honor of introducing Al Mag. So how many of you know Al Mag? Everybody in the room raises their hand because I'm like a mini version of Al. Someday I'll grow up and be just like Al. Al is one of the most influential people in our community and now nationwide. He is the now chairman of BMA National. He's the reason that BMA is here. He founded BMA 4 years ago. Some of us got involved with him right off, and it's been fun ever since. And now, as of this past June at the National Conference in Chicago, he took over as chairman of BMA. And he did it in such amazing style. He showed up in a NASCAR driver's suit. And with all things that Al does, he makes a huge mark. He's made such a difference in the BMA chapter here. He is passionate, excited, one of the most amazing men I've ever worked with, and it is always a pleasure to do anything with Al. So Al, if you would come on up.
Well, she lied. So thank you for coming. It's really cool to be the chairman of the BMA National for a variety of reasons. Our board consists of CMOs of our friend from IBM coming up. I gave you the wrong title, sorry. You'll be willing to take it. Motorola. We have Emerson, GE, Tellabs, Aon, Google, LinkedIn. That's just some of them. So I'm honored to be working with such talented people. But I can tell you, I'm usually the oldest person in the room in any BMA event. I learn something every time. I've learned pages of information at this event. And it is a pleasure to be involved with BMA. If you don't know much about the organization, we're about a couple things. We want to inform, engage, and inspire you to be great marketers. We want to inform you at events like this. You'll network a little bit later and engage and get to know more people. And then hopefully, while that's all happening, we're going to inspire you to do some new things. As Brian was saying, try new things. Don't be afraid. Do something that's going to make a difference at your company. Beat your competition. Sell more product. Get noticed. And maybe get paid for it. If not there, go get promoted somewhere else. We want to help you in your careers. That's simple. So we're going to do our best this next year and the year after. The gentleman replacing me is from Motorola, and I'm sure his intents are the same as mine. And we're going to do everything possible to help marketers in the B2B space around the world, not just in the United States. And I can tell you, we have a few friends from San Francisco and Colorado, and they're waiting for the video at 6 other chapters of this event because they want to copy it and do it in their locations. So I couldn't be prouder of the reason I'm standing here representing the national chairmanship is because of the great work the BMA board does here. We do things differently. We do workshops. We don't do lunches and we don't do dinners. We work during the day and you can go home. We bring in the best speakers we can, and that's whether it be national or here. We're going to help you do your jobs better. And if we do that right, you'll keep coming back and you'll enjoy it. And I can tell you, we have a lot of fun. And so I just want to thank you, the support of the BMA board here. If it wasn't for you, it wouldn't have been noticed by the BMA board national, and they asked me to lead the group. Couldn't be prouder. So thank you. Now I have the absolute pleasure of introducing, how many are you familiar with B2B Magazine? The 2010 Marketer of the Year of B2B Magazine will be coming up in about 2 minutes. Couldn't be prouder. He's a BMA National Board member. He snuck in some time for us because he's leaving for Africa tomorrow, I believe, or the next day. So I thank you for flying here. In fact, almost all our speakers, other than our friend from the Infusionsoft, came here from New York, Milwaukee, North Carolina, and Boston. So we're not bringing people in from across the street. We're trying to bring in the best speakers we can. So I've the pleasure, the best marketer for B2B in 2010 here. His name is John Kennedy, an easy one to remember. In his present position, John is responsible for IBM's brand development and marketing program execution on a global basis. This includes responsibilities to help establish IBM's Smarter Planet agenda, which he had a lot to do with. I got to learn a little about that. Who hasn't heard about the Smarter Planet program? He also, last time I heard him speak, he talked about Watson. I don't know if you'll sneak that in today. I'm winning Jeopardy. And John was previously Vice President of Marketing IBM Americas and involved in marketing and strategy for IBM. He also was involved IBM in Asia and also Japan. And prior to coming to IBM, he was responsible for brand management at Procter & Gamble. So he's a Raleigh, North Carolina guy, a really nice man. Please come on up and give him a great hand.
Al, thank you for that great introduction. I hope I can live up to that billing. And then, of course, you've got your green ticket event at the end of this, where we're all going to the bar. So I'm going to do my best to hold your attention for the next 45 minutes. It is a pleasure to be here and be in Al's, home turf. I've been involved in the BMA actually a pretty short period of time, but when Al asked me to participate, I was really honored because like a lot of you, I think we believe really B2B marketing is the highest level of the game. I mean, it is really a very, very tough craft done in partnership with our sales colleagues. And having done work in B2C and B2B, B2B, I've stuck with it and stayed in it because it is as interesting as it is and becoming more interesting with the advent of all this new technology that we have at our disposal. So for the next 45 minutes, I'm going to cover a lot of territory. I'm going to start at a Smarter Planet level. I can't help but sort of look at any topic from the perspective of this lens of what's happening in the world, just as a way to step back. But we're going to come through that, and we're ultimately going to land on the discussion of marketing technology. And as I thought about today and maybe what to share, coming from IBM, I come at it from a couple of different perspectives. On the one hand, I come at it as a practitioner, similar to you all, applying new technology as we try to market our company. At the same time, we also come at it a bit as a purveyor, because IBM now is in the business of marketing technology and selling marketing technology. So I thought I would take a little bit to kind of explain that. You know, what is IBM kind of doing in this business, and what does that have to do with what IBM does? Doesn't it sell mainframes and things like that? So maybe try to tie those things together, but then at the same time talk a little bit about what we're learning. You know, if you ask me a question about a QR code, I probably will, you know, I mean, it's probably a bad example, a little bit QR code, but I'm not really a technologist. But we are learning a lot in applying it that I think is relevant to wherever you sit within marketing. As we're applying technology, there are some principles and characteristics of a marketing technologist that we think are really relevant regardless of your role. So I'm going to kind of land on these things we're learning. Like, you know, is it so much the technology, or is it a way you approach this task of applying it? And maybe that'll be a way, you know, to kind of end the day. Okay? So, you know, first, like I said, we're going to start way at the top, okay? We're going to wind our way down. But at IBM, we're sort of looking at everything through this lens of how instrumented, interconnected, and intelligent the world is becoming. And a lot of, in terms of what we're talking about in terms of applying technology to our craft, is a function of the fact that so much of the world is instrumented. The fact that there are more transistors now available than there are grains of rice. To the extent that transistors are so inexpensive, people are starting to talk about it as smart dust. And whereas people have been connected now going on 2 decades, we have so much more data to consume and manage because things are connected and things are talking to each other. And we describe an Internet of Things that now are approaching over 1 trillion devices that are connected and transmitting data. And then, of course, as marketers, we have the job of sort of sorting that through. And then this third eye we talk about in terms of interconnectedness is a function of the fact that these devices are all connected and creating new systems. And these new systems now, we have this insight into how these systems operate, and then we can make these systems work a lot better. And then these 3 eyes really are the ways that we step in and sort of look at any problem. And you'll see they apply directly to what we're going to talk about in terms of marketing technology. Just a little bit on, you know, this proliferation of the data and the proliferation of the technology. We talked about the fact that the devices that are connected are now approaching 1 trillion things, doubling in the last 5 years. And the wide variety of things that are all transmitting all of this information. And now, as we all know as business leaders, our challenge is less about applying our judgment to understand data. I remember when I was at P&G back in the early 90s, and a lot of what you learned to do, your brand manager taught you to do, was how to apply your judgment to interpret the data that came through the IRI scanner data or came through the Nielsen data. It told you so little. You had some data, but it told you so little. You had to apply so much intuition to it. Now with the exact opposite problem, right? We have volumes of information, and it's really about trying to understand and mine kind of the insight you're looking for. The other thing that's interesting about all the data we have is so much of it now is unstructured, right? So it's images, it's videos, it's blogs, things like that then need to be refined before we can extract any value. And so just a little bit of a visual to capture this world we're in. But, you know, nonetheless, you know, we are seeing this greatly instrumented, interconnected, and intelligent world really transform industries. And this will sort of be the end of the Smarter Planet platform overview. But what Smarter Planet is, and I'm going to come into this when I talk about marketing technology, is that it's fundamentally a way of thinking about the world as systems. It's thinking about the world as things that are connected together. That's what all of the instrumentation is allowing us to do. So it's allowing us to take something like, an example everybody knows, the electricity grid, which, you know, heretofore has been primarily analog. When you can instrument and track the supply and demand across the utility grid, you've got this ability to more dynamically match spikes in demand with production on the utility side. You've got this ability in healthcare to take all the data, all the patient data that's available around the world about healthcare, combine it in such a way that you can understand it and then maybe create more personalized medicine. There are examples of traffic management systems now that reduce congestion. Public safety is an area that's seeing huge advances as a result of greater interconnectedness, because you've got public safety departments in large cities that are now talking to each other and sharing data. And you've got cities like Los Angeles and New York City that have crime labs, and they can take all the data that's happening in big metropolitan areas and actually predict where crimes may happen. Again, so we're seeing real transformative benefits from these 3 I's. Another great example, and some of you might have even heard me talk about this before, but we talk a lot about a food manufacturer in the Nordics that has transistors on its poultry on the farm and literally tracks the poultry from the farm all the way to the food shelf, to the extent that, you know, the animal has some spoilage issue. You know, rather than taking every package of poultry off the retail shelf, if there's some contamination issue, they can pinpoint the chicken, what the diet was, the farm that it was off, and then surgically address any kind of food contamination issue, versus having to take potentially, which is what we do a lot in the United States. You hear about restaurants that have contamination problems. They have to wipe lettuce and tomatoes off the entire eastern seaboard out of Taco Bell's because they can't figure out which farm it came from. But the point being, these kinds of benefits that we're getting from these smarter systems and smarter industries. You know, and the list goes on and on and on. So that's a lot of what, you know, we mean by Smarter Planet, and hopefully you've seen some of the communication, you know, around it. And it's, we see it manifest itself in almost every dimension of our world, you know, not just industries. We talked about people being connected, companies, institutions, natural systems, instrumenting animals, and so forth. But, you know, where we're going, and this is where it sort of ties nicely to this topic, is since we launched Smarter Planet, now, you know, going on 4 years ago, we're stepping into some new areas as we see new systems kind of emerging. And one is what's happening in the world of commerce. This is how I'll start to transition now into, you know, this subject. Because if there's one area in our in economy and industry that we all know as marketers has been transformed so much by all this instrumentation, it's the way that commerce is transacted, supported with functions like marketing. And in IBM, we've now kind of conceived sort of the next layer of our Smarter Planet story is this thought around smarter commerce. What is smarter commerce? You know, back in the 70s, when ERP and instrumenting your supply chain was a big deal. Then, you know, instrumenting your financial systems was a big deal in the 70s and 80s. We're kind of seeing this whole topic of smarter commerce and what's happening in marketing as kind of the ERP of this century. And the ability to connect the marketing at the front end of a value chain all the way back to the supply chain, this concept of completely instrumenting the value chain is, again, sort of like the big ERP idea of this decade. And that's driven by the fact that, you know, we all know customers and clients, consumers have so much more information. The power in the channel is shifting to our customers because they have the ability to understand everything about our products, talk to each other, and as a result, we're seeing margin compression in a lot of our companies, given the fact that our markets and audiences have so much more information. So the question then becomes, how do companies regain that balance in the supply chain and their value chain by using the information they have to better predict and anticipate where markets are going to go, and then have that connected all the way back to the fulfillment system and the ordering system and so forth. And we call that smarter commerce. And at the front end of smarter commerce is the marketing function. So the ability of a smarter commerce to actually function and function well, it relies on us as marketers to leverage the technology that we have, again, to better anticipate and help the firm understand where its markets are going. Now, the reason IBM has kind of gotten into this business, because you could say, well, again, why is IBM now entering into, and we've acquired some companies that sort of do this, is from where we sit, this is a system like any other kind of a system. It's a system, again, like an industrial system or a technology system. It's about connecting parts of companies and helping companies connect things so that they can be more competitive. And so that's where we see it as a very natural step for us and for our portfolio. And so all I've done here, just may be interesting, talk a little bit, and I won't talk any more about IBM after this, but just some of the assets now in our portfolio as we step in and we have these kind of conversations with big and medium-sized companies on how they can build more, be smarter and more instrumented in their commercial activity, kind of assembling a series of assets in our portfolio to help them, and deliver kind of on that promise. So, we're now a bit in this business and working with many of you. So then now, coming back to this point around the science of marketing, I mean, a lot of our challenge is trying to address the fact that customers, clients, they have so much more information, their expectations are so high, they demand so much choice, right? They demand so much choice, so much personalization. They want their interactions to be so unique and so individual. And at the same time, on the back end, we have to be able to manage for all that choice, which is extremely, extremely complex. The technology layer is what allows all that to happen. And so, as we then thought about, or I was thinking about, what does that mean for a marketing leader? Is it that the marketer, and I guess the question came up a little bit earlier on today, is it about being adept at the technology? Is it about being good at developing something? There's a great blog, a guy named Scott Brinker, he has a marketing technology blog. He sort of posited what are the 8 essential things that a marketing technologist needs to know. And he has a list of things you'll all recognize: data and analytics, marketing applications, advertising, and I think those are all important functional skills to know as marketers today. But I think what I wanted to bring were some lessons or a set of characteristics that we're learning, at IBM. I'm not convinced. You will have a person in your team, I can't remember the last panel, someone in the right skills on your team who will know the tools and will be an expert at data or be able to develop something, or they may be your social media maven, on your teams. But we've sort of come away with, or at least, and a lot of this is the observations of me and some of my counterparts, a technologist comes back to being a systems thinker. And this is where we thought the connection to Smarter Planet was actually, pretty powerful. And I was going to show some examples here. So, what does a systems thinker mean? I mean, applying technology and marketing, we're learning, we think, means first you've got to be able to think at scale, because a lot of what we're using technology for is to be able to balance the huge amount of complexity in our portfolios with this, on the very paradoxical way, provide this very personalized, individualized experience on the other end. So to be able to do that, thinking at scale becomes very important. And I'm going to just share some examples that have been very provocative to us as we've thought about how we're trying to apply technology in our company. The second one, and this may be pretty obvious, but I've got a good example and a bad example about this whole point around process and what we've learned around that and how important it is. And it is it's kind of dry stuff, but we have learned it. And I'm going to give you an example where we did something extremely expensive, where we were not mindful of it enough, and then an example where we actually feel pretty proud about it. And then lastly, it's already been said, we're particularly for big companies that are used to big projects, monolithic things, really learning about the Agile method. And it wasn't until a couple of years ago that I don't think I really understood and appreciated what the Agile method was and how institutionalized it is, how codified it is, the fact that they're experts on the Agile method. And we have now signed up for this kind of religiously inside IBM. We have really gotten excited about it. So I'm going to talk about these, maybe share some examples. And again, not talk so much about the specific technology, but how to think of like a technologist so that as you're using it, you'll get the most out of it. Okay? So far, so good? Okay. So thinking at scale. So here again, we're looking a lot at companies who have this ability to take extremely complicated things and then deliver very, very personalized experiences. We think that is really interesting. And the reason, and this is a little bit of story of IBM, we're a big company, Xerox is here, GE is here. A lot of these companies are companies of companies. IBM's no different. We are a software company that competes with Microsoft and Oracle. We are a systems company that competes with HP. We are a services company, technology services, business services. And you know, these are big organizations that have their own ways of going to market and so forth. But what Smarter Planet is doing, it's forcing us to come together in a much more integrated kind of a way, because we're selling solutions. You know, a smarter healthcare system is made up of a little bit of everything of those things. And smarter traffic's made up of a little bit of everything. So it's bringing our company together in such a way that we're working hard to figure out how do you sell those things again and again and again and again in a more replicable way. That's forcing us to think about, again, how do you design standards, nomenclature, taxonomy, how do you bring those things together? Because once you have that, then you apply the technology on it to create a very personalized, you know, sort of experience. So, again, technology is the enabler in this case, and I'm going to show 3 examples that really resonated with us in terms of other companies we think that have done this really well, that we admire as we're trying to get good at it. And one is an example of where a company has made a very deliberate technology choice, an information model choice, and then a choice around customer experience design. So this is the screenshot from the patent for Amazon's recommendation engine. And it's just here as a bit of a support point, because I think what we think, and as we look at Amazon and think what they've done so well, is they've made a very deliberate choice about the technology that they're going to go use and scale across their entire operation. And you know, all of us use Amazon, and the fact of the matter is that recommendation engine follows you around everywhere you go, and it's gathering data on you everywhere you go, and it's collecting your preference data, and it's building algorithms. And if they've taken that one technology decision they made early on, if they've now scaled it across all their product categories and all their channels. And we think that, to us, shows a lot of foresight. Certainly, I'm sure it's evolved a lot since its original patent design, but we think that was an important lesson to us. Another one we spend a lot of time really obsessing about is iTunes. And coming back to my example about how we're trying to look at our portfolio and figure out how we're going to map it out and understand it in a more standardized way so we can then bring it back together again, we are wondering, what is the information model running behind iTunes? You know, I don't think every new addition to iTunes is approved by some person, right? There must be some very well thought out information architecture to be able to break all that data down into a way that is so disciplined and governed so fast that you can search it, and that every single one of us in this room, when we log on to iTunes, you have something that is completely different, right? We all have a recommendation. That is driven by an information model that has been designed at some degree of scale. We think that is really interesting. How many scenarios did they design before they landed on one? How do they manage it? How do they govern it? To us, that's a lot of the secret sauce behind delivering a personalized experience, is that information architecture that allows them to deliver that at scale. That's thinking like a systems thinker. That's what we mean by that. Another one, very interesting, Twitter. Twitter takes the very same experience, this very simple chronological experience, and everywhere you go, you see it the exact same way. That's thinking about a design at scale. Isn't there a likelihood that you could have experienced, Twitter could have shown up differently on mobile versus tablet versus web? Those are all very different technology platforms. But they've figured out a way, and they've been very disciplined about delivering this customer experience very consistently at scale, which makes them, gives them, you know, such a compelling interface. So that to us is we're thinking about applying technology in IBM. And again, in this case, I'll tell you about this project we're doing. We want to find a way, we think it'd be very interesting if we could find a way as simple as an iTunes situation to then be able to engage with the complexity of our portfolio. We think that would be a really, that'd be give any big B2B technology company a real competitive advantage. You could figure that out. The hard part is addressing these scale issues. And that's where we think, again, is sort of the first lesson of really being a technologist, is being able to understand those kinds of issues. All right, the next lesson is a little bit about process. And to some of you guys, this may be a little bit of a penetrating glimpse into the obvious, particularly those of you who are from companies who are selling, you know, technology. And someone asked the question earlier, how do I get started? and someone said start slow, start small, you would think, even as this is a little bit of the cobbler's children wears no shoes, we're also in that kind of business, and we're advising companies on how to do this kind of stuff all the time. But we have learned, unfortunately, too many costly ways when we we don't improve the process. You guys can complete my sentence, right? When you don't improve the process and you throw technology on it, what do? You automate a bad process, right? So we sort of follow a really simple sort of a model for how to think about doing it first. We'll look at a process and we'll sort of break it down into its vertical silo first and try to distill it down into its essence there to the right, try to identify steps that are redundant, things that aren't necessary. And then as we do it over time, we'll connect it and try to simplify it. So 3 very simple steps that we take. The example I want to show is first tell you a little bit of a story where we created a tool called the Event Solution Tool. And to give you an idea why we needed an event solution tool, someone said there's room for some of the good old-fashioned face-to-face in-person marketing. Well, we do a lot of that. We run 8,500 events at IBM globally, 8,500 a year. That's a lot. We're an event machine. If you take 180 countries, all the events, sellers coming together, doing something, everything from steakhouse lunches all the way up to major trade shows. We needed some technology to be able to track how did these events do? How many people did the number of people show up who were invited? Did we get any lead? What were the cost of these things? What was the return? That level of activity we could afford, and we did invest it in our own event solution tool. We could go build one. Well, here, though, very well-meaning group of people went off and designed and thought through, well, here's all the data we need to capture, and here's the interface, and these are the kind of things we want to understand, and let's make sure we have a reporting capability so we can actually print something out. Did a good job on this tool. But they didn't think about where does this fit in terms of all the other work that the person who's going to use the tool has to do. And do any existing tools we already use pick up any of this data or not? So without any of that process work done, and from a standard standpoint, does it use the same terminology and rules and definitions as some of the other tools? This is boring stuff, taxonomy and nomenclature, but man, when you're doing it, it really matters. And it also plays into the excess of whether the technology is going to be, you're going to get a return on that effort. To say the least, when we rolled this out, we got really poor execution and implementation early on, spent a lot of money on it. It's taken us years now to finally get it back into the fabric of the company. We're using it now, but is a really good example of where when we threw this out, well-meaning idea, without doing a bit of the process work up front, we ended up paying so much more down the road in terms of time and complexity and so forth. So it's difficult to correct and streamline once it's integrated, and it's expensive to correct and streamline. Now, the one that we'll talk about that we think is a good example, and I'm glad we did it well here. We just finished our marketing automation implementation in IBM. We implemented it in 47 countries, and we implemented in 47 countries in 18 months, which is a very, very fast schedule at that level. But what we did is we realized that marketing automation for us was going to be about a new way of working. And marketing automation requires marketers to sit down first and be more thoughtful, actually think a little bit at scale on a longer time horizon around the manner in which they're going to engage and what are the series of steps they'll take as they plan a campaign. We really wanted to understand and build a baseline first of how it was done today, and then going forward with this new technology, how's the process going to shift? What do we eliminate before we implemented the tool? So spent a lot of time on that, really building the right kind of baseline understanding. Ran a pilot for 5 months to test test that, validate what we did, and then from there, again, rolled it out to 47 countries in 18 months, and then by the end of this year, we'll have 80% of our campaigns in the countries running through the marketing automation system. So, early data is good, and we're still going through our own growing pains of helping our sales counterparts understand, what this is and the value it brings. But so far, so good. But a good example of where, again, a lot of this upfront work and understanding the process really, paid off as we rolled this out. The last point I wanted to talk about was this point around the Agile method. And we hired a guy on our team a couple of years ago to come and be our leader for digital design and development. And he came in and really brought this philosophy of what the Agile method is, which is really comes out of the software development world. But this whole bit around working in much shorter cycles, taking more risk early on, course correcting. IBM had been a culture of these monolithic web improvement projects. I mean, we would approach our public site, IBM.com, and go and design these top to bottom overhauls that, by the time that we finally surfaced them, the world would have completely moved. You needed to sort of start from scratch. As we have started this, we're seeing some real success. And the teams talk about planning and strategy in terms of 2-week sprints, 2-week cycles. And in a company like ours, we do a lot of this work with business units funding in. I don't have all the budget to pay for everything that needs to be done. So the economics of this are also favorable because we start small, we take less money from the business units, we demonstrate some improvement, we show them some return, and then they come back and they put a little more money in this stuff, so it gains its own momentum. I talked really about IBM.com, from these huge monolithic designs to some changes we're making, and this is a refresh we've done recently of the public site. And then finally, a little bit of success story here, for the team. Back in this point around the B2B versus B2C and the parallels between them, one of the things that technology and social media is allowing us to do is to do interaction at scale. And IBM has approaching 500,000 employees, many experts in hundreds of fields. So we're approaching social media as an avenue to really open up IBM and all the expertise we have at IBM to our clients and prospects. But that creates a bit of a challenge. You've got to identify who these experts are, you've got to inventory and audit all this expertise, and then create a way in which the world can kind of engage with all these people. Really hard to do, but we thought if we could do that, if you could take the expertise inside IBM, find a way for clients or even our sellers to more quickly access these people, we thought that could really be a competitive advantage for us. So the team took this on. We gave them the challenge, come up with something in 4 weeks. You've got to come up with something. Just get it on the public site in 4 weeks. Validate that this thing will work. And they did that. And as a result, business units funded in, and it scaled from there after some early success. So we were just proud of that. It's early for us, but we're seeing the benefits of these more agile techniques, and hope to learn more from them. So it's sort of kind of bring it home, and then we can talk about anything you want to talk about. To me, I thought about, should we talk about trends in marketing technology? I think as I sit and I watch the teams apply this, what I was learning was that, the technology is important, and going back to Scott's wheel, I mean, you're going to have people on your teams who are the experts in these things, but I think there's a real mindset that comes with applying a marketing technology, whether you are an expert or not. These things like thinking at scale, thinking laterally about your process, and then finally, the benefits that come with working agilely. So that's what I wanted to share, and some of the things we're learning. And my clock says we got a few minutes, and we can either talk about this or take any questions or go grab a beer. So whatever you guys want to do. Thank you so much. Anything, or we can go grab a beer. So, yes, Al.
How do you allow all those people to be bloggers, tweets, and so on? Do you lose any sleep at night what they might be saying?
Well, no and yes. I mean, we think that, well, I'll tell you something interesting. We think that, and I'm sensitive to talk so much about IBM, but since we are in the business of IP and in people, we sort of challenge every IBMer to be socially networked. We think it is a condition of employment. If you're an IBMer, it is a condition of employment to be socially networked, because it is your expertise as someone who works for IBM, regardless of whether your expertise is in marketing or technology or any place else, that in fact is our value. So to that point, the way we do it is we have a very strong and well-communicated set of social media guidelines that we update as new technology becomes available, and we require our employees to read them and understand them, and it essentially says, provides our parameters. Every company should be different, but the expectations if they're going to be active in social media. And we think we have the distinction of, if not being one of the largest, if not the largest single community on LinkedIn, are people who've either work at IBM, worked for IBM, or alumni of IBM. It's a huge, right? It's a 100-year-old company. A lot of people have passed through there. So we really rely on those guidelines out. That's how we do it. So, and I know many companies, do the same. But we implemented our guidelines probably, I want to say early on, 10 years ago or so. Anything else? Yeah.
I want to ask you just about sustainability. You have, I'm on your web right now, sustainable business practices, but from a marketing standpoint, as green is getting bigger, how do you use that? When do you use that? And where do you see that growth in the future?
Well, I'd say kind of two ways. I mean, the first is that as a company and as a discipline, we try and challenge ourselves and all of our agencies to be as efficient as possible. So looking at everything we do, those 8,500 events, think about all the physical, foam board and that's consumed. So, how do we challenge our firms to try to be our partners to just be as efficient as possible? So that's one. And we like to, and we think that's just a commitment to our shareholders and our clients and everything else, along those lines. But then a lot of Smarter Planet is a lot about doing more with less. I mean, the insight there is that, we're living in a slow growth environment, right? I mean, there are few industries that are growing. Most industries are not growing like really fast. The U.S. economy is about to go into another recession, right? So if you're not growing your top line, you need to do more with less, right? And sustainability is not just energy. Sustainability is everything. You got to do more with less with do more or less with your people. Do more. So sustainability is a big. So from that level, as an agenda, we approach sustainability from a total resource management, how to get the most out of the resources you have, and that's from a messaging, and then offering standpoint. That's kind of how we step into it. So it's green, but it's more. It's green. It's water. It's energy. It's people. It's all your resources. Yeah, sorry, thank you, yeah.
It was refreshing to hear the agile method. I've never heard that before, especially from a large company. So how do you keep a handle on everything? Or do you empower those people to make the decisions and make tweaks and updates?
Okay, well, that's a good question. So, okay, so the question was, and I should explain, so how do you manage, if Agile method is proliferated across all the people doing your digital work, how do you manage it, and how do you ensure all those little sprint teams are actually being as productive as they can be? The thing that's occurring with Agile method that I didn't mention is that we're doing, because I guess the greatest advantage and weakness of digital is that the barriers to entry are so low. So when you're working in a big company like ours, and if you were to go on, IBM.com is a mess. It's a mess. Why? Because pockets of our company have been building websites for 15 years, So we're in the process of steadily sort of bringing that back in a little bit more. And we think we're seeing the benefit to run a lot of this more as a service inside the company. And so it's that team, that example I talked about, is a team that sits in the central corporate part of the company. And we think as we can do that better, we're going to have more units in the company come to us to let us do work for them. So the fact is we kept it kind of intentionally small. and a group of practitioners who understand the methods and are sort of the evangelists right now for it. Did that answer your question? Okay. One more. Okay. Yeah. And last question. I'm getting the beer sign.
I'll give you a good one then. Maybe a little off subject, but I keep hearing that Moore's Law may have finally hit a wall that it can't get over. And if that's the case, and the level of technical improvement slows down substantially, will that have an impact on the innovation we keep seeing in marketing and everything else? Or is there so much unused capacity out there it won't make any difference?
Wow. Can I phone a friend? You know, I'll tell you, that is a great question. That is one.
How much of what you're talking about depends on technology continuing to expand?
Well, wouldn't be able to tie it back to Moore's Law per se, but from what here's the story I'm going to tell you. Because I'm not an IBM researcher, but I was so I don't know. I was really affected by what happened with Jeopardy and Watson. And you know, to me, I don't know if the opportunity is as much in the technology or the opportunity is in the data. See, so what Watson did, what Watson was about, because is it a power thing? Because what you're on is Moore's Law is about power, sheer power. I don't know if it's a power thing. It is a ability to connect all the data we have thing and understand that data thing. See, so what Watson did any of you, and Al challenged me to work in Jeopardy. So here we go. Did anybody know what I'm talking about with the IBM Jeopardy challenge? We built a computer. We built a system. It took us 4 years. We built a system designed to compete on Jeopardy against the 2 grand champions in Jeopardy, Brad Reuter and I'm forgetting the name of Ken Jennings, on February, great television, February 14th, 15th, and 16th. But to compete on Jeopardy, Jeopardy is an incredibly hard game show to compete on. We had a computer we built in the 90s that played chess called Blue Gene that played Garry Kasparov. This was another in the line of IBM Grand Challenges. Sometimes we throw out this grand challenge to IBM research, say go do this, and what it does is it forces the researchers to break through some boundary of something they said that could never be done before. So what Jeopardy was about was being able to take things like natural language understanding, which is like hard to do in computing. And then in Jeopardy, right, you get the answer and you have to give them the question, and you're dealing with puns and plays on words, and the question can come from anywhere. So this system has got to be able to, and you've got the speed element, right? You've got to be able to push the button, you know, and you have to know on Jeopardy whether you have the confidence to push the button or not, because if you answer the question and you get it wrong, you lose points. So the system has to be sufficiently aware to know the probability Watson's going to get it right or wrong. I mean, this is like incredibly, incredibly hard. But yes, Watson was 12 refrigerator-sized System Ps. You know, yes, it was. But it was the analytical capability to sort through all that data to come up with these answers, and then after 3 Nights in Jeopardy, beat Ken Jennings and Brad Reuter, and the fact that in 10 years, you know, you're going to be able to hold the equivalent of a Watson in the palm of your hand and have that kind of power access through the cloud. See, to me, that's what's really cool. And then you take Watson. The next thing we're doing with Watson is we're creating a Watson MD, because the problem in medicine is the fact that you've got all this data around the world, but it's not connected. That's the thing about medicine. You know, all these doctors have this experience they've had from their own, you know, all this information. What if you could take all this information about all of us? You know, and many of you have dealt with, you know, really bad diseases. You know, it manifests itself so differently in every person because your chemistry is so different, you know. So you get all this information. If you could put that in one place and take, you know, the analytical design of something like a Watson and really apply it to medicine, what you could learn. So that's how I answer your question. I don't think it's a power thing, which is a lot of what Moore's Law is. It's a ability to combine the data and harness the power of the data, and we learn and we start to know stuff. That's what I think, you know. Okay? Great. Whoops, sorry. Thank you so much. Thank you, Scott.
To that last question, I'm reading a book right now called Flash Foresight. It's written by a guy by the name of Daniel Burrus, who's probably the most well-known technology futurist on the planet, hired by Fortune 100 companies to predict the future of technology. And according to Daniel Burrus, there is no wall to Moore's Law, not in the foreseeable future. And he also makes the point that bandwidth and storage are accelerated at a much faster rate than power. And as a consequence of that, the possibilities are absolutely mind-boggling. So there'll be more to come for sure. First of all, I want to thank our speakers and panelists for doing an incredible job today. And if you didn't know, Watson is...
On that topic, we have speaker gifts for them, so they should see us.
Okay, very good. So all the speakers and panelists need to see Sheila after I'm done here because we have some parting gifts.